What if the biggest problem in your life isn't exactly what you're going through right now, but the speed at which your mind never stops racing? Maybe you've thought the problem was a lack of money, too many responsibilities, difficult decisions, or the people around you. But what if, behind all of that, there's something quieter and deeper, a mind that never rests, a constant stream of thoughts that doesn't slow down, not even when your body is asking for a break? Take a moment to notice how your days begin. Before you even get out of bed, your mind is already active, remembering obligations, anticipating problems, organizing things that haven't even happened yet. Your body wakes up, but your mind is already tired, and the day unfolds like that, one commitment after another, one worry pulling the next. Without realizing it, you spend most of your time living inside your own head. A fast, restless mind creates the feeling that everything is urgent, everything needs to be solved now, everything demands an immediate response. In that rhythm, what truly matters keeps getting postponed, and that later almost never arrives. Life ends up being lived on autopilot, as if you're always reacting, never really choosing. There is a profound difference between living reactively and living consciously. Reacting means responding out of impulse, fear, or anxiety about losing control. Living consciously means being present with what's happening, including challenges. It's noticing what's going on inside you before acting outwardly. It's not passivity, it's clarity. When we look at Jesus Christ, we see something that stands in sharp contrast to the modern pace of life. He lived in a world full of pressure, expectations, and conflict, and yet he walked calmly. He spoke with intention. He acted without haste, not because time didn't matter, but because he wasn't ruled by mental urgency. There was presence. There was listening. There was inner silence. Today, almost no one notices how much they live on autopilot. People eat without tasting. They talk without really listening. They rest their bodies, but not their minds. And little by little, this way of living creates inner confusion, constant anxiety, and a hard-to-explain feeling that something is always slightly off. Maybe you feel this in simple moments, when everything seems fine on the surface, but peace doesn't arrive. When the day ends and there's a sense of emptiness, even though you did a lot, that doesn't happen because you're failing. It happens because a mind that never slows down loses its ability to feel what truly matters. This video doesn't promise a quick fix or a miracle formula. It offers something more honest, clarity. When the mind slows down, life doesn't instantly change, but the way you see, feel, and respond changes deeply. And that inner shift transforms almost everything. To understand why slowing down has such a profound impact, we first need to look at an invisible problem that almost no one is teaching us to see. There is a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from the body, but from the mind. A fatigue that remains even after a full night's sleep, that doesn't disappear on vacation, and that follows you through every moment of the day. This exhaustion is born from a state of constant acceleration that has become so common it's now mistaken for normal. A racing mind is always busy. Thoughts arise one after another, without space for pause. You're physically present, but internally somewhere else, thinking about what you need to do, what you should have done differently, what might go wrong tomorrow. It's as if the mind is always a few steps ahead of life. This excess mental activity generates anxiety. Even when there's no clear reason, there's a constant sense of urgency, as if something important is being forgotten. Time feels too short. The day ends with the impression that nothing was truly lived, only passed through. Philosophically, this reveals a quiet inversion. The mind, which should serve as a tool, takes control. It starts deciding the rhythm, the value of things, what deserves attention. When that happens, feeling weakens. The body loses space, the present moment stops being enough. Spiritually, the inner noise creates distance, not because God is absent, but because silence disappears. There is an inner place where awareness deepens, where presence is revealed, but a racing mind fears this space. Silence gets interpreted as emptiness, when in fact, it is encounter. Jesus Christ understood deeply the importance of this inner retreat. Before decisive moments, he withdrew. He sought quiet places, not to escape reality, but to align his heart, to listen before acting. In an equally chaotic world, he chose pause as a source of clarity. In daily life, the effects of acceleration show up in simple, constant ways. Eating without noticing the flavor, talking without really listening, being with someone while mentally being somewhere else. Life happens, but presence doesn't settle in. Over time, this way of living creates a strange sense of disconnection. You do things, solve problems, meet expectations, but something essential always seems to be missing. A peace that doesn't arrive, a rest that never feels complete, and the more you try to fill that emptiness with stimulation, the further you get from what truly nourishes you. Modern suffering doesn't come only from problems themselves, but from how the mind carries them. Everything feels heavier when there's no inner space. Small difficulties seem overwhelming. Even good moments pass too quickly. Maybe you've never stopped to observe this carefully. Maybe you believed the problem was a lack of time, money, or recognition, but something deeper is happening, a constant inner race that pulls you away from what is simple, true, and essential. And what almost no one talks about is what begins to change when that inner noise quiets down. When the mind starts to slow, the first thing that changes isn't the world around you, but how you perceive it. The same situations continue to happen. Challenges don't disappear. Responsibilities remain. And yet, something rearranges inside as if an old dust begins to settle. When that happens, life is seen through different eyes. Clarity is one of the first noticeable shifts. Decisions that once felt confusing, full of doubt and inner noise, begin to feel simpler, not because you suddenly know everything, but because you're no longer divided inside. A calmer mind can see what truly matters amid so many options, opinions, and external pressures. Overthinking loses strength, and intuition gains space. Emotions also reorganize. When the mind is racing, every emotion becomes a storm. Anger erupts quickly, anxiety spreads everywhere, sadness feels unbearably heavy. As the pace slows, a small gap appears between what happens and how you respond. That gap may seem simple, but it's powerful. In it, you stop reacting automatically and start choosing how to respond. Emotions still exist, but they no longer dominate everything. Another deep shift is the increase in presence. Being present doesn't mean always being calm or happy. It means being whole. When the mind slows down, you start noticing details that once went unseen. The tone of a loved one's voice, your own fatigue before it turns into exhaustion, the simple joy of an ordinary moment. Life stops being just a sequence of tasks and becomes experience again. The body responds immediately to this new rhythm. Breathing deepens, muscles relax, sleep improves, not because problems vanished, but because the body no longer lives in a constant state of alert. A calmer mind sends a quiet message: it's safe to rest. And this rest isn't just physical, it's existential. Your relationship with time also changes in a subtle but striking way. The day feels longer, even though it has the same number of hours. That's because you're more present in each moment. The past loses some of its pull. The future stops being a constant source of worry. The present becomes enough, not perfect, but livable. Slowing down doesn't mean abandoning life or becoming indifferent. It means ending the inner war. Many people live as if they're constantly defending themselves against something invisible: pressure, expectation, a vague fear. When the mind slows, that tension eases. You stay attentive, but not in combat, responsible, but not crushed. From a spiritual perspective, the silence that comes with slowing down isn't emptiness. It's space. Space to listen, to notice, to align. In that space, faith stops being just a concept and becomes lived experience. The peace Jesus Christ spoke of begins to make sense, not as the absence of problems, but as inner presence. My peace I give you, not as the world gives. It's not a peace dependent on circumstances, but on connection. Many people describe simple yet profound changes when they begin to slow down. A decision made with more awareness, a conversation that truly happens, a boundary set without guilt, small gestures that, together, transform the way life is lived. It's not spectacular, it's real. You may notice that you need less to feel whole, less external validation, less urgency, less control, and paradoxically, more presence. Life doesn't become perfect, but it becomes more true, and that brings a kind of peace that doesn't depend on immediate results. This process doesn't happen through force. It doesn't happen by trying to silence thoughts through sheer effort. It begins when you allow the mind to rest from its constant need to control, when you accept that not everything needs to be solved right now, that there is a more human, deeper rhythm sustaining life. But an important question arises here. If slowing down brings so much clarity, balance, and presence, why does it feel so difficult today? In the next part, you'll understand something that completely changes how you blame yourself for not being able to stop. Slowing down sounds simple in theory, but incredibly difficult in practice. And that's not because of a lack of willpower or discipline. The difficulty comes from the environment we live in, and, more importantly, from how we were taught to function within it. The modern world doesn't just value speed, it turns it into a silent rule for survival. From an early age, we learn that we must keep up, be fast, efficient, productive, do more in less time, respond quickly, don't stop. Gradually, this external logic becomes internal. Even when there's no direct pressure, the mind keeps pushing. There's a constant feeling that stopping is dangerous, that slowing down means falling behind. The culture of excessive productivity reinforces this every day. Being busy has become synonymous with being important. A full calendar seems to validate one's existence. Rest has come to be treated as a reward or a luxury, never as a basic need. When someone tries to slow down, guilt quickly appears. A strange, diffuse guilt that doesn't come from a real mistake, but from deep conditioning. Constant stimulation also plays a decisive role. Screens, notifications, information, comparisons. The mind rarely gets the chance to settle on a single point. It's trained to jump, react, consume. Even in moments of apparent rest, like before sleep, excess stimulation keeps feeding internal acceleration. The body lies down, but the mind stays standing. There's also a quiet fear of silence. When external noise fades, internal noise often grows. Stored thoughts, unresolved emotions, avoided questions begin to surface. For many people, staying busy feels safer than facing this encounter with themselves. Noise works like anesthesia. Silence works like revelation. From a spiritual perspective, this reveals a constant search for filling. We try to fill emptiness with activities, information, distractions, but this emptiness isn't the absence of things, it's the absence of presence. And the more we try to fill it with noise, the further we drift from what truly nourishes the soul. Jesus Christ spoke of a kingdom that didn't follow the world's pace, a kingdom where value wasn't in haste, but in presence, where rest for the soul was possible even amid difficulty. This contrast remains current. The world demands constant acceleration. The spirit invites pause, and this tension is felt inside every person every day. It's important to lift a burden here. If you find it hard to slow down, it doesn't mean weakness, lack of faith, or incapacity. It means you were conditioned, trained, shaped by a system that doesn't teach how to stop. No one showed us how to be silent without guilt, how to rest without feeling unproductive, how to simply be. When this understanding arrives, something softens inside. Self-judgment loses strength. You realize you don't need to fight yourself to change. You just need to create gentler conditions for a different rhythm to become possible. Slowing down doesn't require breaking away from the world, but learning not to be swallowed by it. It doesn't require abandoning responsibilities, but changing how you relate to them. And that begins more simply than it seems. Even in the midst of all this, there is a real, accessible path for anyone to take the first steps. When someone decides to slow down, the first impulse is usually to try to control the mind, stop thoughts, force calm, demand silence. But that path almost always creates more tension. The mind doesn't slow down when it's pressured. It slows down when it's no longer being fought. The first real step isn't more effort. It's creating space. Space to observe what's already happening inside. Thoughts will arise. Emotions will appear. Restlessness too. That's natural. The problem isn't their presence, but automatic identification with them. Slowing down begins when you notice a thought without getting lost in it. When you recognize haste without becoming haste. This step is simple, yet profound. Instead of trying to change the content of the mind, you change your relationship with it. You observe without judging, correcting, or trying to reach an ideal state. You simply notice. This gesture returns the mind to its rightful place as a tool, not an identity. You stop being the storm and become the one who notices the storm. Creating small pauses throughout the day helps this process greatly. Not long or perfect pauses, but small, conscious interruptions. A moment of silence before responding to someone. A brief attention to your breath before starting a task. A few seconds where you simply are without needing to solve anything. Spiritually, this gesture is very deep. Being silent before God isn't inaction, it's trust. It's recognizing that not everything depends on your control, that there is a greater rhythm sustaining life, that you can release some of the weight without everything falling apart. This first step doesn't require changing your routine or abandoning responsibilities. It fits exactly into the life you're already living. And when this space begins to exist, something starts to prepare itself inside. In the next part, I'll show you how to apply this in everyday life, practically, without changing who you are or complicating your life. When we talk about practices, it's important to understand that these aren't rigid techniques or complicated rituals. They're subtle adjustments in how you live what you already live, small shifts in attention that, over time, deeply transform your inner state. Conscious breathing is one of the simplest and most powerful gateways, not as a technical exercise, but as a reminder of presence. At certain moments in the day, especially when you notice tension or urgency, bring your attention to your breath. Inhale a little more slowly. Exhale, feeling the air leave. There's no need to count, control, or change anything. Just notice. This simple gesture signals to the body that there is no immediate danger. The mind follows. Another essential practice is doing one thing at a time. Modern acceleration has taught us that multitasking equals efficiency, but internally it fragments attention. When you do many things at once, you're never fully present in any of them. Choose to be present with a single action, even if it's simple: eating, walking, writing, listening to someone. When you give yourself to one thing at a time, the mind finds a more natural rhythm. Reducing stimulation is also an important form of care. It's not about rejecting technology or isolating yourself from the world, but about choosing moments of less information, small periods without screens, news, or comparisons. External silence helps calm the internal noise. The mind needs empty spaces to reorganize, just as the body needs rest to recover. Presence in simple details is another transformative practice. Noticing the light coming through a window, the sounds around you, the feeling of your body supported by the floor or the chair. These details were always there. What changes is your availability to notice them. When the mind slows down, the ordinary becomes enough, and that brings a quiet kind of peace. Spiritually, living in the present moment is a deep form of gratitude, not because everything is perfect, but because life happens here and now. Jesus Christ constantly pointed attention to the present moment, to the now as a place of encounter with what truly matters. Not an ideal now, but the real now, with everything it carries. These practices don't eliminate problems, but they change how you carry them. Gradually, you realize you don't need to rush all the time, that there is room to breathe even on full days. That presence transforms the experience of living. When you change how you live the present, something deep begins to happen inside you, a sense of alignment, of inner coherence, of not having lost yourself amid life's demands. When the mind slows down, almost everything changes because you change. It doesn't immediately alter the external landscape or erase life's challenges. What changes is the place from which you live it all. You stop constantly reacting and begin to be present, and that inner shift transforms the entire experience of existence. Slowing down is a return inward to what's essential, to what was always there but got covered by excess haste. Gradually, you see that many of the pains you carried didn't come only from circumstances, but from the accelerated way your mind tried to control them. When that pace eases, something aligns, not because everything is resolved, but because you stop fighting everything at once. Jesus Christ is a profound example of this presence. He lived surrendered, not anxious. He trusted. He didn't rush. Even in the face of pain, rejection, and uncertainty, there was a steady center within him. His strength came from this quiet connection, from a trust that didn't depend on external circumstances. He didn't chase life. He walked with it. Spiritual transformation happens exactly there, not in grand events or spectacular changes, but in small inner shifts. When the mind slows down, you begin to listen more deeply, to yourself, to others, and to what is greater than you. Silence stops being discomfort and becomes refuge. Faith stops being just an idea and becomes lived experience. You may begin to notice that you need less to feel whole, less control, less approval, less hurry. And in return, more presence, more clarity, more truth. Life doesn't become perfect, but it becomes more livable, more human, more real. And here's a question worth carrying with you, without answering right now. What in your life could change if you slowed down just a little today? Which decisions might gain clarity? Which burdens could be released? What kind of peace could begin to grow in the space that is now occupied by hurry? Let that question echo after the video ends, not as pressure, but as an invitation. A gentle invitation to live with more presence, more awareness, more truth. If this reflection resonated with you, consider subscribing to the channel to continue this journey with me. Share in the comments what spoke to you most today. And if you know someone who is always rushing, maybe this video could be a quiet gift you choose to share.